right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our EEP Workshop Series Part 8. This is our finale of this workshop series. It's been about 8 months in the works, so this is really exciting that we're going to finally wrap it all up today. And John, if you want to advance to the next slide, we can start getting some folks to do their intros in the chat. So my name is Sarah Wilkinson. I'm the programs manager here at Mentor Virginia. If you're not familiar with us, I think everybody on the call is this morning, but our mission is to foster quality mentoring relationships that empower, elevate, and encourage young people. And we envision a Commonwealth of Virginia where every young person who needs and wants a mentor has access to a trained mentor. So I am joined today as well by John Harris. He's my co-presenter today. I will let him introduce himself. And while he's doing that, if you all want to put your name, your mentoring program, and your role in the chat so that we know who is here, that would be great. John, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, I think you're muted, John.
This is going to go much better if I unmute. Thank you. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is a pleasure to be with you. I am John Harris. I'm an independent consultant. I work up in Northern Virginia. I've been with Mentor Virginia for, 6 years or something now. I've been in the field evaluating mentoring programs for over 20. And my major focus, aside from just evaluation, is match relationship quality, measuring characteristics. And so my major claim to fame is probably developing a couple of surveys to measure that we'll talk about later.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So as you can see on the slide, and as I've already mentioned, this is the final workshop of our 8-part workshop series. And those who attend all 8 or do the assessment work for any workshops that they miss live will be eligible to earn a certificate in this series. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation as well. There's also going to be a companion workbook. So similar to last time, I need just a little bit more time to put the finishing touches on that. So I will be sending that out by next Tuesday at the latest. And that will have, it's a little bit different from our previous companion workbooks. If you've seen some of the previous workshop workbooks that we put out, this one is going to really extend on things that we can't cover today because evaluation is such a meaty topic that we will really only be able to dig into some pieces, and there are other elements that we didn't want to leave out but do not have room for in the presentation today. So that's really what the companion is going to be focusing on. And just so you know, we'll be talking about this throughout the presentation, but John is one of our consultants. So he provides no cost evaluation support to programs. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking today, because there might be some things where you're like, oh gosh, I don't know where to start with some of this. That's really what John is here for. So just know that you will have access to that no cost support for really any of the things that we're going to be talking about today. All right, and just to give us that contextual grounding, again, this workshop series is really rooted in the elements of effective practice for mentoring, which is our national best practice standards for the mentoring field. The EEP is primarily rooted in the one-to-one mentoring matches that work in community or site-based settings, but there are additional supplements to the elements of effective practice that give guidance for other types of program models. So if you're doing group mentoring or peer mentoring or e-mentoring or any of the other types of mentoring that you see down there on the screen, there is additional guidance for all of those. And there's actually even some specialized evaluation guidance in some of those supplements, which we'll highlight in the companion workbook as well. So just some of those basic ground rules. We encourage your participation. Please do respect everybody's different viewpoints and stories that they might bring to the table today. We strive to be inclusive in this space. If there's anything that needs to be confidential, then it stays in this room. I don't know that we'll really have too much of that going on today, but just in case, and make sure that we're sharing the airspace among everybody that's here today. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to kind of break this up into about 4 different kind of chunks of information. We're going to start off by getting oriented to evaluation, talking about some basic terms and mindsets that are really helpful to bring when you're approaching your evaluation work. We're going to talk about how to actually get started with evaluation. So we're going to talk about what it looks like to take those first steps and what you might want to outsource, and what kind of evaluation work you might do internally in your program, and additionally how you might pay for all of it.
I need you to understand.
We're also going to be talking about different evaluation methods. So we're going to briefly touch on logic models. We did also cover that in part 1 of this series. We'll talk about data collection and choosing measurement tools. And then we're going to wrap it up by talking about some broad evaluation focuses. So process evaluation, measuring match quality, and also outcome evaluation. All right, and to get us kicked off, we're going to go ahead and go right into laying the foundation for program evaluation. So just kind of keep in mind, before you can evaluate, what you have to do first is implement a program. So these 2 slides, oh, go back, John.
Sorry, I thought I was going back.
That's all right. Oh, we keep going forward. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand.
Do you have the arrows at the bottom left? I kind of see it where you're, okay.
Yeah, I
nice.
clicked on the left side and it kept going forward.
It's okay. It's not a Zoom without technical difficulties, right, folks? Or you can go ahead one more. So here are the companion workbooks for the first 4 companion workbooks. And really, we wanted to just ground this presentation at the very beginning in these pieces, because there's a reason that we kept evaluation to be the final workshop in this series. And that's because you really need to make sure you have all of these other pieces developed and in place and are implementing your work before you're really ready to start evaluating. And so making sure that you've got your the design set for your program, you have all the best practices in place to recruit the right mentors, you are screening them, you're able to train everybody who's participating in your program. And then if you want to forward 1 slide, also talking about those effective matches, you're monitoring and supporting your matches, and you also have your plan in place for closure. So once you're implementing on all of these different layers of program implementation, now we're ready to talk about evaluation.
All right, I think that's my cue. All right, folks. So we have worked to put together a workshop that's going to cover a lot of ground here today. Try and set you guys up with a resource in the slide deck and the guidebook, resources, I should say, that will allow you to come back on your own time and really get a lot out of it all by yourself. So my goal today is to cover a lot of ground without necessarily getting hugely deeply into any of the stuff we're going to talk about. So please don't be anxious if I don't talk about everything on a particular slide. The idea is to cover the important stuff and get through so that you all can come back and work on it as you need. All right, so let's start at the beginning, kind of with an orientation. What is program evaluation? It's a systematic method of collecting and analyzing and using information that tells you stuff about your program. What's important about that? Systematic, okay? It's not just we're looking at what we want to look at, or we're collecting, we're kind of glancing over here. It's a planful, thoughtful way of collecting data that answers questions like, hey, how does this work? What do we accomplish when we serve the kids that we're working with? What could we do better? There's a lot of that you can learn. I want to start early on by acknowledging that there are real barriers to kind of engaging with the evaluation. I understand that it can be an anxiety-provoking thing. Cost certainly is a barrier. You've got a lot of programs that are working kind of with a survivalist mentality, right? Hey, how are we going to make it to next year? And we're going to say 5 to 10% of your budget on average should probably be allocated to evaluation. We'll talk about why. The effort, right? Doing the implementation is enough for people who are not getting paid enough and working too many hours already, right? And if you're going to add the evaluation on top of that, that's a lot. Sometimes if you've already got a program that's been going and you've got an established culture, you can have resistance to adding something like evaluation. People kind of want to push back. Hey, don't switch boats midstream. And then, of course, there's just the logistics, like gatekeepers and getting the data in-house. So why would you do it? Why would you put yourself through it? Well, number one, we're not in it to do good works, right? We're in it to do good work well. If we're working with children, but not doing well by them, not doing right by them, it's not why we're in the field. So we're only human. You need data to help you be efficient and make better decisions. That's not abnormal. You just need to get something in to help you do that, right? You have to have some benchmarks to help you track progress towards goals. And if you think about it, mentoring programs have a real problem with high staff turnover, and you need data to help whoever comes in understand what works and what doesn't. So you can invest in quality control. And here I'm talking about making, everybody's got good matches, right? We all know you can make a great match and it's going to just sing and it really doesn't need a lot of help. But programs, even the best programs I've worked with, have bad matches too. They're just not doing well. The goal is to make your worst matches more like your best ones. All right. When that happens, you're going to have better outcomes. You're going to know more about what you, when you do evaluation, you'll know about your training needs, and you'll be able to think long term about how to shape the program. Finally, good evaluation is cost effective. It's cheaper to keep a match together than it is to remake it. And you get more outcome per dollar by investing in evaluation. The way to make it possible to do your evaluation without being overwhelmed is to keep it feasible. All right, so you're going to hear that as a theme that I hit on a number of times today. A feasible evaluation will make the best use of your resources and time, and it'll give you a positive experience that doesn't overwhelm and make you feel like, oh my goodness, I did this once, I never want to do it again, right? It will help you avoid wasted time and the misery that will prevent you from doing it. We're going to encourage you to adopt a continuous improvement mindset as a way of keeping things feasible. Engage where you can and make plans to improve every year, right? It's going to have to evolve. You can't do it all at once. And if you try, you'll probably have a worse experience than if you just acknowledge that you're going to have to do it in a stepwise fashion. Make some progress every year. So who should be involved in evaluation? The big picture answer here is everybody in your program. Well, you want the director, of course, holds the ideas about how a program should be delivered, but your program managers, the people who are really dealing with the students and making, managing those relationships, are going to have a hugely valuable perspective on what's going on. The youth themselves have a really valuable perspective. It might not tell you something new about what they're getting out of it or how it's working, but it'll help you understand nuance. And as we'll talk about later, nuance can be really important. It can make a big difference between creating or using, I don't want to say creating, selecting a tool to measure the things you want to measure and having a good response to that, or having people be like, why are the people asking me these questions? These nothing to me. All right, there are gobs of fantastic resources available to you now. When I came into the field 20 some odd years ago, there was almost nothing. At this point, as you'll see through the presentation, there are fantastic resources to help you learn every single thing we talk about today. For instance, there's a great module through Mentor called Getting Started with Program Evaluation. It kind of orients to a lot of the things we're talking about. It's just one of those resources. There are others we'll talk about. Use them, check them out, go ahead, and it'll review some of the things we talk about and take some of those things into greater depth. You'll see that some of our slides acknowledge or taken from the presentations associated with that. All right, beginning to evaluate. How do you get traction? Well, the first thing you want to do is commit. So teach yourself what you have to know to at least do some part of it, right? You guys have already started by being here today. You can start building a culture of accountability. And I've got to tell you, the single biggest thing that has differentiated the best programs I've ever worked with is that they hold themselves accountable to their constituents, to doing good work. They set benchmarks and they hold themselves accountable for meeting them. You can budget for evaluation. You can set clear roles and expectations associated with the benchmarks that you set. And hugely importantly, you can develop a logic model that will help you organize everything. We'll talk about that in a moment. You can start collecting data. The simplest stuff to collect is just output measurements about your program, about your implementation. Who are you serving? What are you doing with them? How much of the service are they receiving? How much are you guys doing some of the elements of effective practice, key elements like supervision, training? And then finally, and this is a horse we're going to beat well and truly today until it doesn't wriggle anymore, get help, all right? Never in my time in mentoring has there ever been a time when there was more help available at less cost, okay? So find somebody to help you out. And the question that I like to ask to orient folks around this stuff is, hey, I have been in the field for 20 something years. I've read tons about how to run a mentoring program. I can quote you chapter and verse about best practice. Would you let me run your mentoring program? Probably not, right? Because you know that the way the rubber meets the road requires experience and insight I just don't have, okay? The flip side is true. Evaluation is huge. Now we're only allocating one workshop to it, but it is not as big as one workshop relative to all the rest, okay? Really, the evaluation is as big a world that involves as much as all the implementation. So value the expertise you can get. Doing evaluation poorly will hurt your program. All the more reason to avoid it. All right, today we're going to talk about various key broad elements of evaluation that you can do. The first thing you're going to start with is a logic model. You can do an implementation evaluation, which we also call process evaluation in this slide deck, which tells you about what's going on under the hood. How's the program working? All right. You've got to measure relationship characteristics. And I call it characteristics and not just quality, because quality is how do you feel about it? The characteristics go much beyond that. And as we'll talk about, there's a lot more to understanding what goes on in that relationship. And of course, that's the thing you guys are building that changes everything, right? The relationship. And finally, we will talk about outcome evaluation. We won't talk about outcome evaluation as much as the others because outcome evaluation is really evaluation 201. We're going to set you up to prepare for outcome evaluation by collecting data and stuff like that, but getting the most out of it is a little bit more advanced. All right, so of course, one of the first things that you need to consider as you're moving forward is who does what to whom. Well, you can do internal stuff and you can bring somebody in to do external stuff. Internal simply means it's done by the program. You're going to use online resources and you don't have to pay anybody extra. So it's generally cheaper. You're probably going to take on a smaller scope and limit the focus of what you can do according to your skill level and your bandwidth. And you want to do that in an ongoing way. All of you should be doing internal evaluation at some level. External evaluation is when you bring in a ringer like me, all right, to come in and help you out doing stuff that's more complicated. So you can take on a larger scope. You can do something to answer questions that you would struggle to answer by yourself. It's fine to do some of this annually, especially when it's getting funded by something like the NMRC we'll talk about. But especially you want to be sure you're doing external rigorous evaluation every 3 to 5 years, just to make sure you all are doing the kind of work that you want to do and think you're doing. All right, in the big picture, you all are rated to develop logic models and measure match quality. There are great tools out there to measure match quality, and there are great tools to walk you through developing a logic model and thinking about a theory of change. The theory of change, a logic model we'll talk about in a minute, and I'll talk about a theory of change then too, I suppose. A place where you need maybe a little bit more support is building an outcome measurement tool. for an outcome evaluation, or getting deeply into a process evaluation and doing basic data analysis. Certainly all are rated to do some basic stuff, especially descriptive. What's the average, or how many did this kind of thing? For more complicated stuff, it's helpful to have a ringer. I would really encourage you to get an external consultant to help you with rigorous outcome evaluation. And again, and forgive me, folks, I think that this question about would you let an evaluator run your program might have slipped 2 or 3 times today. Maybe I'm too fond of that question. It's pretty easy now to find evaluation support. I'll tell you what, in times past, it wasn't this easy. You can ask me if I can help you, I will. If I can't, I'll point you towards somebody who will. My email address is available there. The National Mentoring Resource Center is a spectacular resource. You can get online and get funding for 25 hours of external support. That can be towards implementation, evaluation, whatever you need. And really the application is incredibly quick and easy, and you almost never get told no if you're within the guidelines of what they do. You can ask questions of listservs. My favorite is David Dubois' listserv, Youth Mentoring at listserv.uic.edu. All you have to do is click on that, ask to be included, and you will be part of a community of hundreds of practitioners and researchers who really know their stuff and can answer questions you need to know. Google's always helpful. You can, of course, contact Sarah at Mentor Virginia. She'll help you find folks. If you are looking for no-cost support, your local university can be a great resource. The one thing I want to say is that you can work with a professor or a graduate student, but make sure that your goals align with theirs, because they're coming to you for this because they need to get something out of it. And if their goals don't align well with yours, you're not going to get what you need. It can end up being a bigger headache than it's worth. Finally, in this section, how do you pay for evaluation? Well, you're going to generally budget 5 or 10% of your, you allocate 5 or 10% of your budget. Use that NMRC funding. I have found a lot of programs have success seeking out a community donor who really values accountability and evaluation, who can help fund an evaluation. Of course, there's also grants that you can compete for. The one thing we want you to keep in mind is that the cost goes beyond what you pay to a consultant. Your staff time counts, right? Your time counts. You will have to spend time doing evaluation. Your staff will have to spend some time on that. And that is a hidden or sometimes overlooked cost of doing evaluations. So make sure you plan for that. All right. Ordinarily, folks, I would pause and ask for questions. I apologize. I'm not going to do that today. I know I'm moving through stuff very quickly. We got a lot of ground we want to cover. And I also want to make sure that we have good time for the activity we want to do in the middle. So we'll move on to methods and tools for evaluation. Evaluation at its broadest level involves a number of steps. You're going to create a logic model, use that to decide what kind of data to collect. You've got to manage that data effectively, analyze it, interpret it to understand what to get out of it, report on it, and then apply that to your implementation. We're not going to cover all of this in detail today. All right. Everything on the bottom row there, I consider eval 201. And we're going to focus on evaluation 101 today and try and set you up to do a good job getting the data in-house, because once it's in-house, somebody can make good use of it down the road. So long as you have the data, it's always useful. You can get that evaluation, somebody to look at it 3 years, 5 years down the line and get a lot out of it. Okay, so most important starting point is logic model. It drives your work. It tells you what to evaluate, but it also sets you up to understand how your program really works. And you'd be amazed how many practitioners I've worked with who feel like they know their program inside and out, but when we actually sit down and start working expressly on a logic model, they find, this is actually a little bit more core to what we do than I had previously realized. This isn't quite as core as I thought it was, right? Things like that. So you're going to think about your inputs, the things that they do, the actions, and then your outputs. What kinds of things you can measure in order to see how that's all going. Related to that is a theory of change, and that basically works from your logic model to say, okay, we're doing this, or rather, we're bringing these resources to bear, we're doing this with them, and because of that, we expect these outputs and these outcomes, okay? It should be a natural flowing line that helps you see, oh yeah, that's a pathway toward outcome, all right? So theory of change builds from your logic model towards outcome. All righty. If you don't sit down and do a well-designed logic model and think through your theory of change, it will compromise your implementation and it will seriously compromise your evaluation. You will not measure things that are as relevant necessarily. It won't be as useful to you. Start with that process. And make sure that your external evaluator, if you engage one, understands what you do as well as you do, okay? They don't have to be able to do it as well as you do, but if your external evaluator can't create a logic model for you based on what you've told them, then they're not prepared to help you measure your program. Sarah, I think you're up.
Yes, thank you, John. So this is our, some of you might recognize this resource roundup slide. There are a few sprinkled throughout this presentation, but there are also a lot of resources in the companion workbook that we're not even going to necessarily talk about during this presentation. What you'll see here and in the companion workbook are going to be some sample logic models and theories of change that the NMRC developed. So those are examples across multiple different program models and contexts. So they might find one that's close to your model and be able to kind of use that as a guide. There's a module from Mentor on building a logic model, and there's some supporting materials linked there as well that go along with that. There's also a great logic model worksheet that can kind of just give you a space to start drafting out your logic model if you haven't started that process yet. The other three resources listed here, there's a theory of change worksheet. There's a logic model development guide from the Kellogg Foundation that is definitely one of the premier guides on logic models in the field. And then the premier guide on theory of change is called the Community Builders Approach to Theory of Change. So those two guides go really in depth onto sort of what does it look like to build a logic model and a theory of change? What are those? What are the functions? How do you do it? All of those good questions. So all of those resources are available.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, folks. So we've talked about how you orient and get kind of geared up to engage with evaluation. What are you going to do with all that wonderful energy? Collect some data, right? All right. There's two broad ways that you can collect data. There's quantitative, and all that is numbers. It's just a word that means we're going to use numbers. Generally, you're going to generate those with surveys, data from schools, records, just whatever you can slap a number on, okay? And you guys are all wondering about the skeleton bit probably. I think numbers tell you the skeleton of the animal you're looking at. They don't give you anything about what does it actually look like, all right? How does it behave? What's it like in any really meaningful way? But it'll tell you you're looking at an elephant or a salamander, okay? Quantitative methods, gathering data like that can be pretty easy, right? Put a survey in front of somebody. That is not rocket science. All of you are capable of doing that with just a little bit of training. Getting data from a school, this kind of thing. You don't need a whole lot of expertise. You can quickly and easily measure big samples, get a ton of data all at once if it's available to you. So you can get a big bang for your evaluation buck, okay? But quantitative data is hard for a layperson to analyze well. And the reason is that if you analyze it without a lot of skill, things that look like key findings may be misleading. Often there's something driving that that's deeper in the real story. And somebody who's got experience and skill with analysis will be able to find that story. That way you learn the right thing and you do the right thing and your program gets better. You want to be careful about trying to take too much of that on yourself. Quantitative data is increasingly what funders want to know. They love the stories and they'll listen to them, okay? But they really want hard numerical findings that prove you're doing what you mean to be doing. Qualitative data is stories. You can get those from interviews and focus groups or observing. Gives you a completely different feel for the beast, right? Moves beyond skeleton, puts some flesh on it and behavior, all right? A personality, if you will. It answers how and why questions. So when I do projects for clients, full-blown soup to nuts evaluations, I collect quantitative and qualitative data because without both, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to interpret the numbers properly, okay? Qualitative data is really labor intensive, so it can be more expensive than surveying, and it takes higher skill, all right? You need actually a fair amount of skill to ask good questions. Now, program managers often have that pretty well, okay? And we'll talk about that more a couple of slides further on. You can get a ton out of these stories without any kind of analysis. Once you've done an interview, man, you know a lot, okay? But complex analysis might take a little bit more skill, for instance, compared to surveying. Now, while funders want the hard numbers, qualitative data is great for recruitment, okay? And for understanding what the numbers mean, and also to impress some funders or to build on the numerical data, all right? We're going to talk about this further, but interviewer biases can be a real big issue. Forgive me, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a slide dedicated to this. So quantitative data is going to be the backbone of most of your evaluation, right? How do you build a measurement tool? Well, you start with, let me tell you, tell me if you've heard this before, a logic model, right? And a theory of change, okay? So that you've really laid it out clearly, right? You figure out also, what are the factors that influence the outcomes that you're trying to measure? Because those are important to measure as well. Don't measure just any wild thing. Make sure that somebody has shown that mentoring affects it, okay? Identify the things that are relevant with your logic model and theory or change. Throw that net really wide, okay? But then pare it down. You have to measure enough, but not too much. We'll talk about guidelines for that later on. Once you've figured out what you want to measure, you got to figure out how to measure it. There are so many well-validated surveys and subscales out there, you wouldn't believe it. Many have always existed, but they were hard to find. There are now compilations of these things all over the place. A survey is a tool that measures a number of different things. It can include multiple subscales. A subscale is just a group of questions that gets at one very focused thing. I might have a survey that asks about how you like ice cream. I might have a subscale about how you like chocolate ice cream and a subscale about how you like ice cream with nuts and chips in it, okay? A good measurement tool will have items that resonate with you. What do I mean by that? There are tools out there that get really well at important constructs. They were developed in the 60s or whenever, okay? And boy, are they well regarded. But oh, the language is so stilted, okay? And some of the things that they get at in the items really don't apply anymore, or not expressly. They were oriented more towards people in that time, right? You want to read items where you say, yes, that is exactly what I want to know. That speaks to me. I feel that. Because if you do, the students who answer those questions, or whoever's answering them, because it doesn't have to be just students, it could be parents or teachers or mentors, all right, they will also resonate with those questions. And when it's meaningful, they'll take it more seriously and they'll engage with it. If it's not, if it feels like somebody just slapped something together and threw it in front of them, they'll feel punished and they won't do it. You want something that's long enough, but not too long. And here I can offer the guidance. There's no rules about this. In my experience, though, kindergartners and first graders can handle maybe 10 or 15 items at a time if they're fairly normal, average functioning, okay? Second and third graders can handle maybe 20 or 25. Fourth and fifth graders, 35, maybe 40. Sixth graders and up, 50. If you really, really want, maybe a few more, okay? Never more than 60. That's what I have found in my experience, okay? But there's a big but with that. You know, are the kids you're serving dealing with English as a second language or other learning challenges? Then you need to account for that and either reduce the amount that you're asking of them or provide more support. You might have to do it one-on-one instead of being able to do it with a whole group of people at once, okay? Be aware that there are generally free options for you to measure whatever you want to measure. In most cases, somebody has developed a strong tool to measure what you want to measure. Not always, sometimes it's not free, and sometimes rarely it doesn't exist, okay? But if you can't find it, find somebody who knows this stuff, who can help you find it. And it is fine to pick and choose from multiple sources. When I create outcome batteries for the clients I serve, I might measure 5 or 8 different subscales, okay, choose 5 or 8 different subscales, but they're going to be from different authors because each subscale really got at that particular client's needs better than any of the other ones do. Final thought. Use whole subscales. Don't break them down, okay? Otherwise, you lose the power that makes them respected and useful to you. All right. Why do validated tools matter? Why do you have to use these validated subscales and use them in their entirety? Well, because you run real risks if you don't, all right? Creating your own tool, you might think, oh, I know exactly what I want to ask. I got to tell you, folks, I have created surveys that are in use around the world, okay? And it takes dozens or hundreds of hours to create a good survey, all right? It takes a lot of time just to create a good item because it's so easy to just, you think it makes total sense, but somebody else reads it a little differently, okay? So don't rely on yourself for creating surveys, creating items to measure. You run the risk of collecting useless data, all right? Your questions are confusing, or you create an item that actually is asking 2 things in one, okay? And nobody knows exactly what to answer to it. Or you have quiz questions where there's a clear right answer, you know? Do you think this is a good program, right? You know, and everybody knows how to answer that. Oh, sure, yes, it's great. And thank you so much for spending the time to give it to me, okay? If you do that, you waste time and your findings won't be taken seriously. Worse, you could end up being misled, learning the wrong things and doing the wrong things and actually hurting your program. So what do we mean by a validated tool? We're talking about tools that have been found in published research to be valid, which means that they measure what they're supposed to measure, and they're reliable, which means they do it the same way again and again and again, okay? And when in doubt, go with something that's recommended by somebody who knows, like for instance, the National Mentor and Resource Center, or a ringer like yours truly. So the resources that are available are nothing short of spectacular now. The NMRC is the best thing, in my opinion, that has happened to the field of mentoring since I joined it, okay? They're providing resources, providing funding for people to use the resources. We've included links here to some, not all, some of those resources for you. They'll tell you, they provide their own orientation to evaluation. They provide tools to measure mentoring relationship quality and characteristics, as well as guidance for how to use them. Various outcomes that have been found to be influenced by mentoring in relation to a number of different outcome areas. We only included a few. There are a bunch, okay? I use those a ton. I also have found super useful stuff. Some of my favorite sites to borrow from: Child Trends, Ad Health. The OJJDP has put out compendia. That's just a fancy word that means a huge group of subscales and surveys for you to use. There are toolkits by other mentor affiliates. I've even found useful stuff that was produced in Australia and Canada. Of course, if all else fails, Google and Google Scholar are fantastic resources. And again, listservs and ringers like me. All right, if you're not going to use surveys, or even if you do, forgive me, interviewing can be a super way to bolster your insight, okay? Now, in an ideal world, you'll bring in a non-biased, impartial, external person for a variety of reasons. They're probably very good at interviewing, but it's also more likely that the people they interview will tell them the truth, okay? You can mean well, but if you sit down in front of somebody you're serving, they like you, they appreciate what you do, they are raised to be polite and grateful, and they will be polite and grateful, and it will be really hard for you to wring criticism and the truth out of them, okay? I'm not saying you can't do it, all right? You have to, if you can, by being incredibly sincere and saying, I really mean it. If you tell, here's my spiel. When I sit down, I say, today you are the teacher and my job is to be an expert learner. You know stuff and I want to find it out. Now, if you tell me what you think I want to hear, I'm going to learn the wrong things. I'm going to tell the program the wrong things, and they're going to do the wrong things. So today, don't be polite. Tell me what you really think. And if you don't want to tell me something, that's fine. You don't have to answer. Just don't tell me something you don't think, because it's better for me not to get an answer at all, okay? And I really sincerely mean that. And I kind of bring myself to the interview in that way, and I tend to get honest feedback. So consider, is the interviewer that you're selecting likely to influence the answers, okay? Are they skilled enough, all right? Are they capable of being unbalanced and asking questions that are honest and exploratory and not leading questions, right? Don't have an agenda necessarily. Once you do that, you have to decide what to ask, same as with the survey, okay? Those questions should stem again from your logic model and what you need to learn about. And you can take a structured or unstructured approach. Structured means I have a list of questions that I'm going to cover, and I want clear answers to each of those. I'm not going to get into long discussions about any of them, okay? An unstructured approach is, this person knows stuff and I want to find out what it is. They know some stuff I am not even wise enough to understand to ask about. I'm going to find out what to ask about, okay? By letting them tell their story, I'm going to let them run. And it may sound, I'll tell you folks, in the interviews like that, I have learned over time that somebody will start, it seems like you're going into left field, and you're like, what? Okay, you're just trying to be polite. And then they bring it around, and what you thought was left field is actually plum area to learn really important stuff, okay? So there's benefit to both structured and unstructured, and you can do some combination of the two. Once you do that, you're going to create a safe space to talk by bringing yourself to it in the kind of way I was discussing, and by also making sure that nobody has to feel like somebody's listening in or this kind of thing. Make sure that you get representative perspectives. This is something probably should have been on the survey slide as well, right? You've got to make sure that you're looking at all facets of your program. Everybody's reflected. That can be older, younger, boys, girls. It can be different types of programming that you do. And then in an interview, you want to make sure that you record so that you always can come back to it and make sure that what you thought you understood is what you actually were hearing, and then take notes anyway because I don't trust technology. All right. The link there provides a little bit of a resource for conducting interviews. I will tell you candidly, I did not find one that I absolutely love. This is the best one I found. Woohoo! You guys don't have to listen to me yap anymore for a minute.
Thanks, John. So we're going to do a quick evaluation activity. I know some folks have to jump off by 11, but you should actually have enough time to participate in this if you would like to. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into a few different breakout rooms. I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now to a Jamboard, which hopefully you all have had the chance to work with before, but if not, this will be a fun new thing for you to try out. So you'll click on that link and you'll get in there with your group. And together you guys will use the sticky note feature to add any pain points, any questions, concerns, ideas, thoughts. I mean, anything that is resonating with you about evaluation. You're thinking about what brought you here today. Where's your program at with your evaluation processes? All of that good stuff is great fodder to add as sticky notes onto the board. So really just engaging in some conversation around evaluation. And each breakout room will have its own slide on the Jamboard. So, when you get into your group, try to figure out which, are you group 1, group 2, group 3, and then you can toggle between different screens in the Jamboard because group 1 will have a slide, group 2 will have a slide, and group 3 will have a slide. And then before time runs out, so we'll have about 10 minutes or so, you and your group will want to decide which of the pain points or questions or whatever sticky notes you've created, which of those do you want to bring to the full group, because we're going to have the opportunity to do a quick debrief and every group will be able to kind of bring up one of the key things that they talked about. And you can drag that. There's a designated place on all of the Jamboard slides that you can kind of pull that over. And if you happen to need to refresh yourself on these instructions, they're on the 4th slide in the Jamboard as well. So are there any questions about the activity before we go ahead and go into the breakout rooms? Okay, awesome. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and send it out. There's gonna be 3 rooms, as I said. Make sure you grab that link for the Jamboard, and we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. You should be seeing the option to join the breakout rooms now.
Hey folks, welcome back. Sarah, were you gonna lead this? Or did you want me to take it on?
Well, you're the evaluation expert, so
I didn't know whether you wanted I didn't know whether you wanted to engage first. All right, folks, so we were looking at what you were doing just a little bit as you were doing it. That's fantastic. Hope you had a good opportunity for discussion. See a number of good questions, and we'll get to your top questions in each group. And the others we will talk about next week at our lunch workshop. So you can bring those and any other questions that come to you. So who would like to unmute and talk about which question would you like me to address in group 1? I see, but you'd like to.
Okay. Well, I think they sort of go together. So this is Jackie. So our question was, I think it was a very good question. So we noticed that there are mentoring manuals for each subpopulation, such as African Americans or people of color, LGBTQ, tribal. So those need separate evaluations. Are there evaluations that go with each program? Or has one been set up already? And 2, how do you collect that demographic information so it won't seem so intrusive? Because a lot of grants require demographic information.
All right, those are 2 questions. Jackie, thank you very much. I will do my best to address them. The short form is that there aren't many resources out there for specific populations. There's an increasing body of surveys or scales, especially that are useful for that. But I'm going to answer your question in a couple of ways then. So when you say, are there evaluations that address, I assume you mean kind of, are there tools that you can use for evaluations that, okay, super, that address that? The answer mostly is no. Okay, mostly what you measure will be the same across programs, but with a different flavor. Okay, for outcomes, like your outcomes, there will generally be a survey or scale that's appropriate. And your logic model will dictate what that is, okay? And so the outcome would apply maybe to a group surveying people, in particular LGBT, or something else, some other group, okay? But the important thing is to use theory of change to point to the outcome that you're measuring. The more specific answer is that there is, as I say, an increasing kind of body of surveys that are useful in that way. And the NMRC provides or lists some of them. For instance, there is a survey that measures cultural sensitivity. The mentor's cultural sensitivity might be a very useful survey, one that I'm going to actually talk about later and recommend that people really seriously consider using in addition to other things that they might measure. The question, well, first let me pause and see, do you feel like I've broadly addressed at least what you wanted to know?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Okay. And reach out behind the scenes or come next week, okay, to ask more if that was a polite answer and you honestly wanted to know more. Happy to have that conversation at greater length. Also, if there are very specific questions, I can go and help you find something, okay? As for the demographics, that's a sticky one. That's tough, right? Because you have to have some of that information. Otherwise, you can't do the types of analysis that you need to do with the data. So one thing to consider there, a couple of things really. First, you can't make anybody give it to you, okay? If they're just not comfortable, if they don't feel safe, they shouldn't be pressed to do it. You can make the case, hey, we really need this, it's important, and we can't help you as well if you don't share with us, all right? But nobody should be coerced into providing information about themselves in any way that they're not comfortable doing, okay? That being said, if one of the ways that you can make people more comfortable sharing information is by helping them understand how it's going to be used and how their privacy is going to be protected, okay? For instance, you could render everybody anonymous in your database by having only one document under, like password lock and key, okay, that puts a name to an ID number, okay, and then using an ID number to identify everybody else. So ID number 10143, okay, is a Black homosexual male, okay, something like that, or whatever demographic information that they're providing. But that would be a way to help protect anonymity, and that's especially critical to do when you're sending data out to a ringer like me to analyze. I always will tell a client, I'll help them understand how to use ID numbers and then make sure that they never send me anybody's name. I don't want to know. I should never be in a position of knowing somebody's name and being able to associate it with the sensitive data that gets sent. Did that address your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
It did.
Wonderful. Group number 2, who would like to talk about the question that you guys selected for group number 2?
I can talk about that because that was my question.
Hi, Laura.
Hey, so you were wonderful years ago and helped us create evals for our students. We worked on pre and post. We also did match quality. I guess my question is, so these were paper surveys that we gave to the students. So like before we started and at the end, they were in the classroom, we're school-based. So when we were there, they would fill it out with us in the classroom. However, when we moved to e-mentoring, I wasn't sure how to navigate that. I didn't know if I should be converting all of that to like a digital evaluation that they can do online. So we we just didn't really do it. I did create like a Google Doc with more of that like qualitative stuff you were talking about, just like, what did you enjoy about the program? What would you change about the program? Like those kinds of things. But I wasn't sure how to navigate the quantitative stuff. And so I didn't know if you had advice on programs that sort of moved into that e-mentoring environment and how to proceed with that.
Laura, great question. You were one of the first programs I think I might have worked with doing this kind of TA. And candidly, I would do things differently with you now from how I did it then. Like, I'm amazed I didn't leave you with digital surveys, right? Everybody I work with now, I provide hard copy and digital surveys to work with. So the short answer is I'm happy to help you get there. Okay. Yeah, translate it all online. I actually have, I use Google Forms. It's cheap, can't do better than free service that's actually pretty useful. Okay, you can pay for services like SurveyMonkey that will do more for you. I'm not sure that a program like yours, it's a great expense, to be perfectly honest with you. You can get a lot of mileage out of Google Forms. It's just not pretty. So translate those one-to-one, right? Question one is, whatever question one is, should be question one there. The great thing is you can use drop-down menus so that students it's the interface they're used to using, right? Click and select, click and select, click and select. The neat thing about Google Forms is that when you complete that information there, you can actually get it to import automatically to Google Sheets. Okay, so it's all set up for you to use and analyze and score really easily. Okay, so if you get with me behind the scene, after the fact, I'll be happy to help you work through that. But the short form is translate one-to-one. I'm going to add, I don't think this is exactly what you were asking, but I'm going to add some of your things might not be relevant anymore. The outcomes might have shifted because of how mentors are limited, or even because of how mentors are able, what's the opposite of limited? The boundaries are expanded in some ways, right? Or maybe shifted, right? So just, I think maybe to do another logic model and think through whether what you're measuring is still the most relevant thing to measure. Does that make sense? And then similarly, the relationship measures that you were using, the match characteristics survey, and the surveys that we set you up with, are probably still mostly relevant, but not as relevant. It might be useful to bring in a subscale from another survey, maybe drop a subscale to make sure that your e-mentoring is really addressed expressly. Is that getting at the things that you were hoping to find out?
Yeah, I think so. And were you saying that the evals you sent me, there is a digital version of it already, or I need to convert it over?
Well, there are Google Forms versions of the measures of match characteristics, because I think you were using the YMS and the MCQ, right?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
So you check, and if so, I can set you up with that as quick as I can just send something or share something with you through Google.
Okay.
There is no digital form of your survey right now. Like in Google Forms, well, at least I assume there's not, because you don't have one. I would have given it to you. The creating of that is actually pretty straightforward and easy. But let's get together after the show here, and I'll be happy to talk you through that.
Okay.
And help you with it as well.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. Sure. All right, last and certainly not
John,
least,
unfortunately, we do not have time for group 3. We're just going to have to move that over to the Q&A lunch hour that we're hosting next week to continue the conversation.
I humbly apologize, folks. And Sarah, actually, I'm going to push back. I'm going to give a super quick answer to this. Apparently I went too long. I yapped too much trying to answer questions. The super quick answer to this one question, folks. What just happened? I feel like it just changed.
What just changed?
All right, the previous question asked about sample size, okay? And the short.
Yeah, I tried to condense it, John. That's why.
Okay, I appreciate that, Virginia.
And I'll come to the coffee talk, so you don't have to go through it.
1 minute, and I can do well with this, and I'm just going to move quicker through the other stuff. It'll be fine. The short form is that when you've got small numbers, quantitative data is not useful. I won't even generate an average for clients with less than 10 in a sample, okay? Because one person who's really different can have a huge impact on that number, okay? Even with 15, if you've got one person who's way different from everybody else, you're gonna have a completely different finding. So you have to be really careful. 2 answers to that then. 1, build sample over years, all right? So 15 times 3 is 45, and that is a usable sample. 30 is even in the ballpark of usable, okay?
Okay.
And the second is, yes, you're absolutely right. In the short term, use qualitative methods to build your insight until you've got enough numbers to really do a good job with statistical analysis. All right, now I'm gonna be good and move on. Sarah, you tried.
It's okay. Just keep in mind, we have about 15 minutes for the rest.
Thanks. Moving at the speed of whatever we can muster, folks. All right. So we're getting now into some of the specific stuff. Show up to the workshop next week. And if everybody wants, we will do this for eval 201. Okay. To get more deeply into these things that we're going to go blowing through here today. Process evaluation is an approach to getting at the guts of your program. What is it you're doing? What is it that how can you measure the outputs that generates? Okay. Mentors meet with students. How often? For how long? Okay. You're providing supervision to those mentors. How often? What kind of supervision? You're matching. You can do every element that's reflected in EEP can be measured in a process evaluation. So what kind of sources of data? The types of things we've been talking about. Existing records, the records you track as a program, like mentor logs, attendance, case files, training attendance, this kind of thing. You need to set those things up and track them. And then surveys, interviews and focus groups, direct observation, and NQMS, National Quality Mentoring System, which Sarah will talk about. When you're doing your process evaluation, you're asking questions like, what percentage of intended mentor trainings are conducted each semester? All right, well, was it? One of the best programs I ever evaluated required that their case managers supervise, have supervision meetings with 90% of their caseloads every month. And if they didn't, they were put on notice. And if they continued to not do it, they were fired. That's accountability, right? That's setting a standard and then following through on it. Implementation of process evaluation is going to ask those types of questions. Sarah.
Yes, thank you, John. So I think we saw this question on the Jamboard too. Somebody asked, is there an evaluation that can help with mentoring program components and sort of measuring that? And the answer to that is yes. It's called the National Quality Mentoring System. This is something that we offer here at Mentor Virginia at no cost to programs. And it is essentially an in-depth process evaluation that you, as a program, you conduct basically an audit of your program practices. You look at your program design and your program operations. How well are you recruiting, screening, training, and doing all of those elements of effective practice? And then it also looks at a lot of the kind of foundational program management pieces like your board, your marketing communications, your finances, all of that stuff. And then it also digs into your evaluation. How well are you doing evaluation? Kind of looking at national best practice standards. So, and throughout the process, what's great about it is that you walk away with a sense of, okay, here's what we're knocking out of the park in our program, and here's what we could probably invest some more staff time and energy. And it really helps you prioritize, because your capacity is always going to be limited, and you always will have to make decisions about what deserves your attention now and what you might be able to focus on a couple of years down the road. And so that's really what this process is lined up to do, to really help you figure out kind of where to put your time and energy as you're sort of looking to continually improve the quality of your program. So John, I'll let you go to the next slide. And then we might actually breeze. Yeah, we're going to breeze through this one and go to the next one. Part of what you get out of the NQMS process too are quality badges that are nationally recognized. That's one of the benefits of going through the NQMS process. But it also helps lend you credibility with your funders, with your volunteers, with families that you're working with. It's something that allows you, when you go through this process, it enables you to show that you are committed to high quality programming. And through all of that as well, you know, you're engaging in that process evaluation and you're getting help to do it. You don't have to do it alone. So can certainly answer any more questions that folks might have about NQMS. It's also, there's going to be information in the companion guide as well about this. And then our resource roundup, there is some information here about the National Quality Mentoring System. There's an online module about how to plan a process evaluation. There's some additional resources that really kind of break down different elements of implementing a process evaluation there. And then there's also a worksheet that helps you plan out what your program is going to do for process evaluation.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, folks, buckle in. We'll cover what we can and let that be enough. So measuring match quality is crucial. The main thing that you guys do is make mentoring relationships. That's your widget, all right? And you need to understand how those are going, or your program isn't going to be as good as it can be and the outcomes won't be as good. There are good tools available for measuring. Why should you do it? Quality control. Making your best more, your worst more like your best, right? And proving that you're doing what you say you're doing. When should you do it? All right, don't try to measure more than safety and compatibility in the first few months, because there's a honeymoon period. After that honeymoon period, you can measure everything because the match will probably be mature and ready for that. After that, measure annually, okay? What should you measure? Most people think about satisfaction. Hey, are they happy together? That's really important. If I could only ask one thing, that's what I'd ask, okay? But there's so much more that's really important. The purpose of this slide is to show you how small a portion of that satisfaction is. Satisfaction with the relationship. You want to ask about relational satisfaction, but also instrumental. How happy are the participants with what the mentee is getting out of the relationship? You want to ask about environmental quality. We call that external quality. The site where they meet, maybe the school or the community influences the match in those ways. The program certainly influences the match. Parents can influence the match. You need to understand how. And then critically, match structure. What do they do together? I'm going to emphasize this even though we're really in a hurry, because this is so important. If you're not measuring structure, you don't understand what it is people are doing that leads to satisfaction and leads to outcomes. Structure, the activities that they do, is what is coachable. You can find out, hey, when mentors do this, we get better outcomes. Coach them to do that more, to train them and supervise them to do that more or less. Make sense? All right. So how to measure it? Well, match supervision gets at it, all right? And informally, I've seen programs use a traffic light approach. Red means that it's at risk for failure. Yellow means it's on the rocks, and green means it's in good shape, okay? That's very informal, loosey-goosey. Useful, but not as good as the structure that's available now. A tool called Examining the Health of Youth Mentoring Relationships, okay? a new tool that is theory driven and covers those types of things that I just described. If you do that, you're going to learn a ton about your relationships. The staff will be able to complete that. The caution, though, is that practitioners have biases and they don't know everything. Okay, so you also need to do surveys. They're more efficient. You can get that data all at once. They can be comprehensive or very focused or anything in between. They capture the participant's perspective directly, and that's really important. I can't emphasize enough. You've got to do it. All right. This is just a slide to re-emphasize the theory-driven. You can come back and look at that, how it structures the questions to ask and provides a scoring system so you have data that you can generate as a staff, even if you don't get all your surveys back. Comprehensive surveys. The most comprehensive are the ones that Mike Knuckle and I developed, called the Youth Mentoring Survey and the Match Characteristics Questionnaire. They measure all the things that are listed in that framework. Okay, but there are other multi-focus surveys that offer different lenses. Look at the subscales and decide which one resonates best with you. Okay, the important thing is not which survey you use, but so that you're getting something that measures all of those relational and instrumental components of each section. You can make a survey of your own out of the best. Briefer surveys can have multiple focuses or focus on one thing. Jackie, I think this is where you were getting at something. There's an increasing body of useful surveys that the NMRC lists, okay? And there are some even that aren't listed there yet. So reach out to me if there's something in particular you're looking for measurement, that get at things like youth-centeredness and cultural sensitivity. I'm going to put in a plug for measuring cultural sensitivity. I think it's something that programs have overlooked my entire career, okay? And it's coming to the fore with some of the work being done on critical mentoring, right? Encourage you to look at the scale that's available to measure that. All right, there are unfortunately very limited surveys available for measuring group mentoring or e-mentoring. Reach out to me though, and I can put you in touch. There's one on the NMRC website. It's kind of focused and partially validated. I have developed a comprehensive survey, okay, that is also not validated. I'm willing to share it with you though, if you want to use it for your group mentoring program. You could also use just subscales from those surveys. For e-mentoring, I'm not aware of anything really strong, but you can use subscales from validated surveys that are developed for one-to-one, but still apply. A lot of that still applies. All right. I'm glossing over this one. Sarah, can I gloss over this one?
Yeah, this will all be in the companion workbook.
Groovy. All right. Outcome evaluation. Well, you're doing it to demonstrate what you're accomplishing, of course. Okay. When should you do it? This is important. You're only going to really get into it when the program is stable. That means that your programming is as you mean it to be and has been for at least a year. Okay. If you're still trying to develop your program, don't measure the outcomes. It's not useful to you. It's a waste of your time and effort. Also, if some big change has happened, like for instance, the executive director just came on, it's probably not the year to take on big, rigorous outcome evaluation. That said, anybody, any program, regardless of stability, can still do some level of evaluation work, building a culture of accountability and tracking something. Remember, we talked about earlier the types of things that are easier, medium, and harder to do, right? Get engaged with that at the level that makes sense for you. I'm going to skip over this one and talk about this slide. Very important slide. Per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese has an almost one-to-one correlation with civil engineering doctorates being awarded. Oh my goodness, who knew that the answer to getting more civil engineers was eating more mozzarella cheese, right? Okay, why do I make the point? Correlation is not the same thing as causation, okay? Just because this happens at the same time that does, doesn't mean this causes it. Remember that slide at the top of the show? What is evaluation? all those wolves howling at the moon, okay, they're not making the moon shine. Okay, so you gotta be skeptical. And this is another reason it can be helpful to bring in a ringer, okay, to figure out your stuff. Sarah, do you want me to throw it back to you to close now? Or
We're
shall I just push
definitely
through?
getting close. Yeah. If there's one more important slide you want to cover, and then we can close out.
Thanks. So we're moving from outcomes monitoring, which is, yeah, I'm measuring outcomes, okay? And I can't tell you anything. If you give me pre and post test data, I cannot tell you anything about whether your program is helping kids. I can't, because what if the kids were doing way worse before they got to you and they do the same? Well, that's actually really better, isn't it? You change their trajectory. Make sense? Okay. But what if they were doing flat before they got to you and they do the same? Well, then your program's useless to them. Okay. Or maybe useless in the short term. We don't know what that means. And you can't know until one of two things happens. You can relate your program implementation indicators to it to say, well, when we do this, it helps more than when we do that. Okay. But ultimately, what you have to get to is comparison. Okay. And that means comparing served students to students who don't get the evaluation. I'm not going to get into experimental versus quasi-experimental now because I just don't think we have time. Sarah, do you want me to explain that or turn it over to you?
I think we're going to have to hold that one off until the next week when we're going to do kind of an informal part 2.
Sorry, I didn't get through it all, folks. It was fun though, answering your questions.
Yeah, we knew we were being ambitious with the amount of, evaluation is just such a big topic. So John, if you want to fast forward to the ending slides, I'm going to go ahead and drop a bunch of links in the chat right now. You're going to be like, whoa, it's an explosion of links, but there's a whole lot of great stuff that I want to make sure that you all have access to. So yes, if you have any questions after this workshop, if you want to, we have a whole other section we didn't even get to about managing your evaluation, and there's some more information on outcomes that we didn't fully get to dig into. So next week we have on the calendar, Wednesday, February 23rd from 12 to 1, extended Q&A time with John. I'll be there as well so that we can talk about anything that didn't get covered today. I think there were a couple questions in the chat we didn't have time to get to. So if you can make it to this, please, the link to register is in the chat. I'll also make sure to email that out to everybody. And if this time doesn't work for you and you still have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or to John, and we will make sure that those questions get answered. There is a great event coming up to celebrate Black History Month with us. It's called Real Richmond. So that link is also going to be in the chat, but we're going to be talking about the Real Richmond History class that has been developed for Richmond Public Schools, and just a great way to sort of show community spotlight and connect to Black History Month. And we're going to be talking about the connection to mentoring as well. So we're very excited about that event that's coming up. And if you hit the next slide, John, real quick, go one more. So we're at the end of this series, right? So that means that the certification process is, that's really the next step of this. So if you have any outstanding assessments, and that means if you have not attended any of the workshops live, you are required to complete the assessments for that, for whichever workshop that was that you missed. So all of those are going to be due March 15th. So you have a few weeks to get all of that outstanding coursework in, and then we will be awarding the certificates, and we'll also be giving you a social media and website toolkit to help you promote the certificate that you've earned by coming to all 8 of the workshops or completing the coursework for the ones that you couldn't make. So we'll send more information out about that, but just wanted to let you know that date is March 15th. And then lastly, there's a link in the chat as well. I'm sure the feedback we'll hear from this one is not enough time, which we totally understand and hear. But if there's any other great feedback that would help us do better with this workshop or any of the series in the next time we offer this series, please do let us know. And I really appreciate your time. I know we're about 1 minute over, so thank you all for your time today.
Thanks so much, folks.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So on the website, when you click on the assessment, it gives you a notification that you're not able to complete it.
Okay, we'll have to troubleshoot that, because when I click it, they were all opening for me yesterday. So I'll have to, I saw your email, but I'll have to troubleshoot that with you today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. This was great.
Thank you,
Thanks, Lauren.
John.
Nice to see you all.